Some of you may say that it takes quite a lot of arrogance to only be playing the game again for just a week and then already making a new video about how the game should be changed and how it should be rebalanced. I mean, who the fuck am I to say how the developers should do their job, especially after leaving the game in the cold for 3 months straight. So, if you happen to see nothing but that arrogance right now when watching this video, you know, I get that, and keeping it real, I wouldn't even be able to disagree with you there. However, I still didn't want to let that stop me from making this video, because I want only the best for the game, and right now I still see a lot of problems with the game. I don't think a lot of people can disagree with that, especially not after watching my massive Please Fix video, where I basically went through all the bugs. And actually, in that video I also said that half of the issues that the game has lies within those bugs, and the other half lies within big balance issues. As you probably guessed, in this video I want to talk about the second part, the balance part. Now, there is no way that I will be able to go through every tiny detail of every single skill and all that stuff, but that's fine. No game is perfect, every game has underused and underpowered items, champions, builds, strategies, whatever. And that's fine, you know, the fact that mobile cover will probably remain to be its own meme until eternity, that's fine. But when certain things are very overpowered or disruptive to the gameplay experience, usually those things are not fine and they also get addressed. So I want to address the things that hinder the experience in big ways, big issues, and also how I would fix them. I'm probably going to leave some sort of timestamp guide in the description. However, a lot of these issues are also connected to each other, so I can't promise that if you skip forward to a certain part of the video that you'll get the whole picture. Anyway, as I said, the video is going to be long enough, so let's just begin. First and foremost, I want to talk about stamina. Yes, stamina. Of course that was going to be on this list. Because stamina is pretty much only good for unlocking some weapon talents that require a certain amount of stamina, but other than that it is pretty much useless. This is because since patch 1.6 it only gives the player 15 health per stamina point, whereas in the past it always used to be 30. This causes players that spec into stamina right now to not really see themselves become a whole lot more tanky. But they're still giving up on either a good amount of damage or a lot of skill power. The only reason I can think of as to why Massive has decided to lower the stamina to health scaling is because they wanted to avoid 1.3 situations where players would be too tanky to kill and still have good skills for themselves to heal themselves up. However, back in those days, players used to run around with a lot of armor, 65% or even 75%. Right now, players only have 33% armor or 35% armor in Last Stand, which means that the majority of their toughness is decided by their health pool, and thus this means that if you would be able to stack a lot of stamina, it would also be much more difficult to heal all of that stamina back up if you're taking damage. Oh, and back in the 1.3 days, skills also used to be much more powerful, even when the player wouldn't commit into electronics at all. I, for one, remember fully speccing into stamina and my first aid still healing me up from a 0 to 100 HP. That's just not gonna happen anymore in 1.6. In 1.6, if you do not spec into electronics, your heal is going to be shit, and speccing fully into stamina just makes you a literal walking wall, useless and pretty much good for nothing. I'd say that's the way to be the most tanky overall, even if 1.6 had a 30 health per stamina point scaling, is to actually spec a lot into electronics, because you get way more sustain from the low cooldowns and the powerful heals. So yeah, those same players running around with Seekers, they are actually also the tankiest players out there right now, because, well, they also have those powerful heals to heal themselves back up. As we've all seen by now, this has forced a very shallow meta, where everybody is pretty much forced to run their build with Vigorous, with health rolls on their gear, and with Skill Haste, where they do not have the option to spec for health. It's basically the only way to become a little bit tanky without giving up on everything else like you would do when trying to achieve the same amount of effective health by speccing into stamina. Even if you forgo most of the damage or skill power, you will still end up getting bursted down, because the added benefit of the stamina rolls on your gear, well, it's just not a very big amount. The difference between not speccing into stamina and speccing into stamina a lot is far smaller than the differences between speccing and not speccing into electronics, for example. The solution to this problem is fairly simple though. Up the stamina to health scaling. I would initially say to bring it back to 30 health per stamina points. That has always been acceptable in the past, but if you do the maths, you will see that even going as far as 40 or 45 wouldn't be an issue. As I mentioned earlier, with how much the game has changed since 1.3, getting a lot of health means that it will also be be very difficult to heal all of that health back up. If you would be able to run around with 600,000 toughness, well, even the most powerful heal a healer can put out right now will not fully top you off. Also, the amount of armor that players have has been significantly reduced. With the 75% damage mitigation from armor that players had in 1.3, each point of stamina would be worth 120 toughness. You know, because the 30 health would be multiplied by 4 because you had 75% armor. Right now, because we have 35% damage mitigation from armor, we could have 75 health per stamina point scaling, and we still wouldn't see the same amount of toughness in return as that we did in patch 1.3. Now, I personally think that would be too much. There's a reason as to why patch 1.3 also wasn't a very good patch, but I do believe that the stamina scaling was in a good place back in patch 1.5. One stamina point gave us 30 health, and with the 55% damage mitigation from armor that we had, that translated in roughly 66.5 toughness per stamina point. To achieve that same amount of scaling in 1.6, where we only have 35% armor, the stamina to health scaling would need to sit around 45 health per stamina point, and the fact that it is currently sitting at 15 is just showing you how bad it really is. But yeah, that pretty much concludes the topic of stamina and the stamina to health scaling. So, it's time to talk about the second issue in this video, healing and cooldown spam. In my personal opinion, healing is the biggest cheese that this game has, and it's only gotten worse and worse since launch. There are so many sources of healing and things that can reduce your healing cooldowns that players can just face tank each other in the open field without taking much punishment for it. The use of cover fades away completely, and any combat at mid to long range that does not include a sniper is just a wasted effort, because if you cannot 100-0 someone within just a few seconds, it usually ends up in them just refilling their entire health bar only to trade damage again and again. Part of this has to do with the skill cooldowns in general being far too low, but another big part in it is also the fact that a lot of the healing related skills and talents have very abusable mechanics. First up on the list is of course triage. As I pointed out in my massive Please Fix video that I released, recently, I do believe triage to be bugged when used in combination with the first aid skill. You know, the whole thing where it gives the user 15% cooldown reduction per player stepping into the first aid. This is nothing new, it has been like that pretty much since the launch of this game, but I just cannot imagine that this is the way that it is supposed to work. But yeah, let's just ignore that bug for now. Even without it, triage would still be far too powerful, because it doesn't just reduce the cooldowns by 15% for the user, but it also reduces the cooldowns of the players stepping into the heal. You know, the players on the receiving end. I'm pretty sure you've all seen those groups of 4 players, all equipped with the triage talent, all equipped with the first aid, and all they're doing is spam their heals and run in circles to reduce each other's cooldowns. There's just no way that you're gonna be able to kill that. And of course, that is quite the extreme example, but the fact of the matter is, it's possible, and there are a lot of groups out there that have caught on to this and that are still doing this. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that this is just broken. So, starting when talking about those healing numbers and how healing should be reduced, I think fixing triage is a good place to start, and honestly, I don't believe it is that difficult to do. I'd like to suggest just a few simple changes. First up, triage should only proc once per skill, meaning that no matter how many players walk into your first aid, the talent will only activate once. Second up, I'd like to change it so that it only reduces the cooldowns for the user of the skill. Keep it a good pickup for any healing related build, but nothing that boosts the skills of the players on the receiving end. And then last up, I'd like to reduce the amount of cooldown reduction to 10% instead of 15%. And a little further into the video, the reasoning behind this last change is going to explain itself, so just sit tight. The second heal-related cheese mechanic that I'd like to address is the master mod for the support station. Now again, the actual healing for the support station is bugged at the moment. I already talked about this as well, it doesn't really heal consistent. But what bothers me a lot is that a lot of players, even with low skill power, can just use the support station, place it on the ground, and then instantly blow it up for a very large area of effect heal, which most of the times heals them up for much more than their first aid does. Again, take the extreme example of groups of players running in circles and have them run a few support stations as well. As soon as someone gets low, they drop it down and then instantly blow it up to fill up their health bars again. Even for the high skill power players, instantly blowing it up is still one of the most efficient ways to use it. This is not only because the cooldowns for the support station are low enough for the players to just spam it and explode it over and over again, but also because every time that you put it down, it gives every player extra triage procs, which then even reduces the cooldowns of their skills more. You know, whereas if you just leave it on the ground for, let's say, a whole minute, you only get 1 triage proc out of it. But I've also already thought of a solution to get rid of this. First up, skill the healing that the Master Mod provides with skill power. So the more skill power you have, the more it instantly heals. And then second up, revert the change made to the cooldown of the support station in patch 1.4. For those that don't know, before patch 1.4, the support station cooldown and the cooldown of many other skills in the game would start to count down even before the skill effect had ran out. This of course resulted in certain skills such as the smart cover having 100% uptime, so Massive adjusted this to where the cooldowns of such skills only started to count down after the skill had expired, which seemed like a smart solution at the time, but with the change to the support station master mod, it has eventually resulted in this cheesy mechanic where players can just blow it up, get the cooldown, blow it up, get the cooldown, and so on. If we increase the cooldown of the support station by a very large amount, but then let the cooldown start the moment that you place the support station down, it will actually reward the players who are able to maintain a high uptime of this skill, while players who blow it up instantly for the burst heal alone will be stuck with a very lengthy cooldown. But with that being said, we aren't really done talking about healing, because on top of that, I'd also like to look at skill haste. I believe it's been made too strong and that players right now can get too much skill haste from the rolls on their gear. Right now, if you combine everything that you can get on your gear, you can get up to 40% in total, and 18% of that is basically free because you do not have to give up on any health, and also because it's not competing with any other rolls that a skill-oriented build would want to pick up on. If you add the 2-piece tacticians to that, it is another 15%, which basically puts almost all the builds, healers, hybrids, seeker mine turret or balanced builds, everything except glass cannons, it puts them at, or at the very least, very close to the 50% skill haste cap, which has an enormous impact on the game and adds even more to that skill spamming trend that we just keep seeing everywhere. I know that a lot of people hate it when I call for nerfs to certain gear stats that you may have grinded for, but I truly believe that for the health of this game, we should cut down the skill haste numbers that players are able to obtain from gear. As I said, the total number that you can get from gear right now is up to 40%. What I'd like to do is I'd like to reduce it to 26%, where every roll everywhere takes a little bit of a hit, but every option still remains valuable. Then I'd like to reduce the skill haste on the Tactician's 2-piece to 10% down from 15%, and also switch the Tactician's 2 and 3-piece around so that the 10% skill power is the 2-piece and the 10% skill haste is going to be the 3-piece. That is going to make it a little bit more difficult to just fit in any random hybrid build. I would also like to reduce the soda consumable down from 30 to 20%, and as I said, I would like to reduce triage down to 10% from 15%. To finish it off, I would also like to reduce the hard cap for skill haste, put it at 40% instead of 50%, so that even if players would be stacking all those buffs together, it still wouldn't go ridiculously high. And I know that all of this sounds very dramatic and that it sounds way overboard and that it's going to cut out the skill-oriented players and kill their playstyle, but that, it's simply not true. Let's be honest here, good builds will probably still be sitting at the cap most of the time, which means that with the right buffs you're only gonna lose out on about 10%. But to get to the cap, it's going to be a lot harder and players need to dedicate a lot more resources to it, so not every random hybrid build that you come across will be sitting at that 50% cap. That is my point. The dedicated skill builds, they will not really feel it that much, but the hybrid builds, they will not have that same skill spam ability. It would be a good thing if you couldn't put down a seeker mine every 8 seconds. Just like it would be a good thing if I wouldn't be able to heal all of my teammates to a full overheal every 6 seconds. With the changes that I put down here, cooldown gets a beating, but to be honest, it needs a beating. Cooldowns right now are out of control and this game is hardly a shooter anymore. Which also brings me to my next point on the list, something that makes this game even less of a shooter: grenades and shortbow knee pads. It's very simple. Grenades are too spammy and the shortbow fuse time is stupidly low. The problem with shortbows is that players on the opposing side, they just have no time to avoid the grenade. The fuse time is that short, meaning that if you have half decent grenade throwing skills it pretty much always ends up being free damage, a free stagger, and in the worst cases, a free 3-second shock if you use it in combination with a shock grenade. This is only made worse because in Last Stand you get a free refill of each grenade on every respawn, which means that if you have a few guys running around with this exotic in Last Stand, it can already result in a very frustrating nade spamming experience. The only good solution that I can think of is to just simply rework shortbows. They don't have to do something completely obsolete. If you want to do something grenade orientated, you know, that's fine by me, I got nothing against that. But give players on the opposing side at least a chance to avoid the damage or the stun effect. Even without shortbows though, grenades are still very spammy. Players can end up just playing a game of handball where all that really happens for a minute or so is tossing grenades back and forth, trying to stagger someone here and there. You can just spam those things. What I suggest is to simply increase the cooldown of grenades so that you can only throw one grenade every 7 or 8 seconds, just like the medkit has a cooldown. Maybe then give the shortbow a lower cooldown for grenades. That's another idea for an easy rework. Additionally, it would also be great if players were only given 2 frag grenades up on respawn and Last Stand and no more. There's a reason as to why outside of Last Stand these special grenades are limited and scarce. There is no reason for them to be given just for free in this game mode. All it does, and especially in combination with the current state of the shortbows, is result in cheap and frustrating kills. Of course, it's also really important to look at the NPCs in the game and have them to be adjusted to the changes, to keep the PvE game pretty much identical. That's really important as well, but that's what the PTS is for. 1.7 is also going to have a PTS for the console, so that's going to be a very good thing as well. Perfect opportunity to try these things out. Anyway though, that's gonna wrap it up for now. If you have anything to add, you can let me know in the comment section down below. Yes, I do read and reply to comments. And I'm sure that some of you may know of some important stuff that I might have overlooked in this video. I had a few more things I wanted to talk about, but it's, you know, it's already a really long video. So yeah, as always, I will see you guys later, or like they say in the Netherlands, zie je later.